You may hear about the Missouri Senate often, but do you ever wonder what's really going on behind the scenes? All of us here have people at home that we are representing. All of us here have matters that we think are serious for the state of Missouri. So we are trying to do things in an orderly fashion, and we cannot continue to have this chaos. I'm Senate Majority Leader Cindy O'Laughlin, and I'm here to give you that honest view of Missouri politics. Thanks for tuning in to our podcast, Hard Truth with Cindy O'Laughlin. Good morning. This is Hard Truth with Cindy O'Laughlin. Each week I bring to you the activity that is happening on the Senate floor. Sometimes from the outside of the chamber, you can't really tell what's going on in the Senate. And this week, the biggest piece of business, I would say, that we did was we talked about defunding Planned Parenthood. This is something that we have addressed really several times in the past and have run into some resistance from the courts. So we feel like we have a solution for that. And today I have a guest, Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman. She is sponsoring the legislation, and I asked her to join the podcast today to give us kind of an overview of that bill. Mary Elizabeth?
Cindy, thanks for having me on your podcast. I think I'm the first guest.
Yes, you are. You're the first guest.
That's pretty great.
Yeah.
So this was our first week doing more substantive things. We've kind of been able to get past the logjam, and I'm looking forward to us having more productivity to deliver on these big conservative items. So thank you for your leadership in doing that. We had a wonderful first discussion yesterday about defunding Planned Parenthood. As you mentioned, that's something that the legislature has been trying to do for many, many years. In fact, we've passed that language in budget bills for many, I guess twice at least that I know that I voted for that. And interestingly, the Democrats have voted for it too, because they voted for those budget bills with that language in it. So the courts have unfortunately rejected those efforts of ours. They've said we couldn't do it. The first time, there's an outstanding case that hasn't come back yet about whether our second attempt to do that in the budget or through the budget is working. So we're working on doing a standalone bill. And so by doing a standalone bill, it's our strongest signal. It's the strongest way we can make laws to say it is unacceptable that a provider in this state that is owned by entities that are providing abortions, not just in Missouri, but owned anywhere, that we are providing them any funds. You know that funds are fungible. You're a small business owner. I run a family budget. And if you have more money here to spend for something, then that means you can use it for any other use.
So can you tell our listeners how much money has been spent with Planned Parenthood, even in the last 2 years?
Okay, so this is where I think it's really interesting to say, and that's why it's very important. The Parson administration put out promulgated rules as we've been fighting the legislative branch with the courts to defund Planned Parenthood. The executive branch got involved as well, and he promulgated rules to say we are not going to be funding Planned Parenthood at all. And so last year there were $0 that went to Planned Parenthood. The year before that it was less than a couple $100,000. And so, people use all kinds of rhetoric around this issue. They say we're trying to take away women's health. They make these kind of absurd arguments that it's going to be impacting the federally qualified health clinics. But in reality, those entities are already under the Parson rules not receiving any dollars. We've zeroed out the line item in the budget. And this is to make sure that when we have a new administration, that the next governor wouldn't undo those rules, that it's in our statute books, that the Supreme Court can't overturn that. And so I think when you look at kind of where this issue is going or why this is so important, money is, as you know, our budgets are moral documents. And it's important that we make sure that those dollars are not supporting entities that fund abortions, ever zero at all.
So you're the perfect carrier of the bill. You're probably the number one legislator for pro-life issues. And we appreciate your taking on this task. It's never easy. Nothing in the Senate happens easily, even when the majority of people agree with the issue. Can you tell me what you expect going forward?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. For me, life is the most preeminent issue. My name is Mary Elizabeth, and you'll remember from your Bible that when Mary visited Elizabeth, that St. John the Baptist leapt in his mother's womb. He was the first one to recognize the divinity of Christ. So this issue is really important and personal to me, and as a mom of 6 and 2 adopted kiddos. So anyways, nothing is easy. Everything is complicated, and everything takes time. And so I think that there's an expectation, if you're not familiar with the legislative process, that the first time something goes onto the floor, that we just pick it up and pass it. But we have to have ongoing conversations, not just within the majority party, although there are amendments that we're working through that the majority party is also offering, as well as the Democrats, because in the state Senate, every single senator can speak for as long as they want on any topic, and we've sure seen a lot of that this year.
Yes, we have.
And so working through those stakeholders to make sure not just the idea is right, but the language itself is right. And so we're having ongoing conversations, not just with members within our majority party, but with the minority party as well in the Senate. And then we also are having to talk with the House, because our expectation is that they will send us, or we will send them, a bill that does the same thing, that defunds Planned Parenthood, and we want them to feel comfortable with the language. We have to work with those who have sponsored bills in that chamber as well, along with their leadership. And we're having conversations with the governor's office too, to make sure that he feels comfortable with what we finally send him, so that he's able to sign it. So we want to make sure that we get a strong bill that can be truly agreed and finally passed, signed by the governor as soon as possible, and can go into effect, because we want to make sure that nothing would ever happen, that we would have dollars going to Planned Parenthood.
So Senator Coleman, just to sort of recap what you've told us here today, you have a bill sponsored. We've brought it to the floor.
Yep.
You are having conversations with the legislators on both ends of the building, and ultimately the governor's office, where we will talk about making sure none of Missouri taxpayer dollars are going to terminate lives of unborn children.
Yep, that's right. Can I just say too, one of the things that somebody always talks about, I'm totally overtaking your podcast.
No, go ahead.
Sometimes people will say things like, I can't believe you're wanting to take away this funding from an entity that does provide health care. But I kind of want to tell everybody that's listening that what I find fascinating is, in the last 2 years, that entity has gotten less than $200,000 from Planned Parenthood. Those are clinics that are operating in the state of Missouri by Missourians, that if they just dropped their affiliation with Planned Parenthood, they're already not doing abortions in the state because of the heartbeat bill that I know you, and Missouri Stands for the Unborn Act, you voted proudly for, and we're a champion to help us get that done. When you're saying you would rather have an affiliation with an entity that is killing the unborn, that is really preying on women, rather than disassociating yourself in order to have access to public funds, I think that's what's really astonishing to me, because they could just disaffiliate and then they'd have access to the Medicaid dollars, but they would rather not do that. They would rather say, no, we're not going to disaffiliate. We're going to continue to do that because it means so much to us to be associated with an abortion provider. I find that kind of shocking.
So that is disingenuous, and I think that's really a very important point. People around the country look at Planned Parenthood, they read about Planned Parenthood, they see reports, Veritas videos about Planned Parenthood, and we want to honor life. And when we see reports of states that are allowing full-term babies to be aborted, it's the taking of a life. So we find it very important. I think that we'll find the solution here. We'll get it done. It will take some time, so I just want you to know what to expect. But I think that we get it done. And I want to thank Senator Coleman for her commitment to life and for her being on the podcast today. And I thank you for watching Hard Truth with Cindy O'Loughlin.